What if the most powerful, transformative health intervention out there isn't actually a new supplement?
Right. Or like some incredibly expensive detox tea.
What if it isn't a complex biohacking gadget or, another wellness trend that costs an absolute fortune? What if the absolute best thing you could possibly do for your body is simply, well, just giving it a break from food?
It sounds incredibly countercultural, doesn't it? I mean, just strategic, intentional periods without eating. But that fundamental biological principle has somehow been completely hijacked.
Oh, totally hijacked. Somewhere between the fitness influencers, the hardcore biohackers, and the actual clinical science, fasting has taken on this almost mythical status online. So today we are cutting right through all of that noise. I'm Ethan,
And I'm Kate.
and we want to welcome you to the Living Better podcast. Thank you so much to our incredible community for tuning in today. And hey, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button to the channel so you never miss an episode.
Because around here, our official motto is living longer is a science, living better is a choice.
Before we jump into the research, we just need to be clear that this episode is strictly for educational purposes. It's not medical advice. Fasting is a really potent tool, and it is absolutely not appropriate for everyone.
Yeah, especially if you are pregnant or if you have a history of eating disorders or, are managing a chronic condition like diabetes, always consult a qualified healthcare professional first.
Definitely. And that boundary is just so important because our mission for this episode is to look at what human physiology actually does when you stop eating.
Right. We want to decode what happens inside your cells at 12 hours versus 16 hours, who genuinely benefits from this practice and who actually gets hurt by it.
Yeah, and whether the biggest health transformations are actually coming from something much, much simpler than the internet claims. So let's start with the most undeniable biological reality here. Humans did not invent fasting as a trendy health hack. We are basically just rediscovering it.
Exactly. For the vast majority of human history, constant, uninterrupted eating was simply not an option. Our biology was forged in these extreme environments of feast and famine.
Right. The whole concept of 3 square meals a day, plus a mid-morning snack, a mid-afternoon energy bar, and a late-night treat, I mean, that is a profoundly modern invention.
It really is. We've engineered an environment our metabolisms have never fully adapted to. We have 24/7 access to highly palatable, ultra processed food, and the result is that our bodies literally get zero metabolic rest.
I always think of metabolism like this massive manufacturing plant. If you run the assembly lines 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you never shut off the machinery.
The mechanics can never get onto the factory floor to do the routine maintenance.
Exactly. Eventually, the gears just grind down. So, mechanically speaking, what is the main gear that we are grinding down with constant eating?
Well, the central gear in that entire system is insulin. Every single time you consume calories, especially carbohydrates, your pancreas releases insulin into your bloodstream.
And its main job is to kind of unlock the cells.
Yeah, it acts like a key, unlocking your cells so that the glucose from your food can enter and be used for immediate energy, or it gets stored for later.
But when we are eating constantly, like from the literal moment we wake up until right before bed, insulin never really drops, does it?
No, it doesn't, and that is the core of the mismatch. When insulin is chronically elevated, your cells essentially get full. They just don't need any more energy, but the insulin keeps knocking on the door trying to shove more glucose inside.
Wow.
Yeah, and eventually, your cells stop responding. They become what we call insulin resistant.
So it's basically like someone shouting at you constantly, and eventually you just put on noise-canceling headphones to block them out.
That's a perfect analogy.
And when the cells block out the insulin, that sugar just stays trapped in the bloodstream, damaging blood vessels, while the pancreas desperately pumps out even more insulin, trying to get the message across.
Yeah, that is exactly how insulin resistance works. And high insulin is a one-way street for fat storage. Biologically, insulin tells the body, hey, we have plenty of energy coming in, so stop burning our fat stores.
So if you never let your insulin drop, the ability of your mitochondria to seamlessly switch from burning the food you just ate to burning your stored body fat.
Which means when you don't eat for 3 hours, your body completely panics and you get that horrible mid-afternoon energy crash.
We've all been there.
Oh, absolutely. But when you start a fast and you finally stop putting food into the system, that machinery can power down.
But how long does that actually take? Because I see all these rigid rules online saying, 16 hours perfectly activates fat burning.
Yeah, and it's fundamentally flawed. Human physiology does not run on a precise digital stopwatch. Metabolism works on a spectrum. The exact hour your insulin drops and your body shifts into fat burning is heavily influenced by your daily stress levels, your sleep quality, the carbohydrate density of your last meal, and even your underlying genetics.
So it's not a light switch.
No, not at all. If you ate a massive bowl of pasta at midnight, your body isn't magically entering a fasted, fat-burning state by noon the next day.
That makes so much sense. But this whole rigid timing obsession leads us directly into the internet's absolute favorite buzzword right now, which is autophagy.
Oh, autophagy. Yeah.
Like if you spend 5 minutes on health social media, someone is trying to sell you a protocol to activate it.
Right. And to be clear, autophagy literally translates to self-eating. It is your body's internal cellular recycling system.
Okay, self-eating sounds a bit intense.
It does, but it's a good thing. Over time, your cells accumulate damaged proteins, dysfunctional mitochondria, just general cellular debris. Autophagy is the process where lysosomes, which are basically little cellular incinerators, engulf that junk, break it down into amino acids, and use those raw materials to build new, healthy cellular components.
Okay, so think of it like a smartphone that's totally running out of storage and starting to glitch. Autophagy isn't just deleting old photos, it's taking the corrupted code from a crashing app, breaking it down, and actually using it to build a brand new battery.
Yes.
But I have to push back here. I am genuinely confused when I see major wellness influencers guarantee a quote-unquote total cellular reset at exactly 16 hours.
If human metabolism doesn't run on a stopwatch, where on earth did that highly specific number come from?
Well, it comes from a massive misinterpretation of animal data.
Yeah. The studies looking at fasting and autophagy in mice are astonishing. We see incredible cellular cleanup and disease reversal. But a mouse's metabolism runs so fast that its entire lifespan is compressed into a couple of years. Their resting heart rate is over 500 beats per minute.
Wait, 500 beats a minute? Oh, wow. So a 16-hour fast for a mouse is biologically completely different than a 16-hour fast for a human.
Dramatically different. Depriving a mouse of food for 24 hours is roughly equivalent to a human fasting for several days.
That's a huge difference.
It's massive. So when an influencer extrapolates a 16-hour mouse study and presents it as an absolute guarantee for humans, they are fundamentally ignoring the vast differences in species biology. Researchers will tell you we still don't have a reliable way to measure autophagy in living humans in real time, let alone pinpoint the exact hour it peaks.
Okay, let's follow that logic then. Because if the perfectly timed cellular hacking aspect of a 16-hour fast is heavily overblown in humans, why are millions of people dropping 20 pounds, reversing their pre-diabetes, and feeling amazing on these protocols? What is actually happening?
Yeah, so the newest research consistently points to an answer that is much, much less glamorous than cellular hacking.
Oh, what is it?
It's behavioral simplicity.
Behavioral simplicity.
Right. For the vast majority of people, fasting works because it naturally and effortlessly eliminates constant snacking, mindless calorie consumption, and most crucially, it completely stops late-night eating.
Ah, the midnight fridge raid. So you're saying the magic isn't in the 16 hours of not eating. The magic is in the fact that the window physically prevents you from eating ice cream at 11 p.m.
Exactly, yes. And we really need to look at the mechanisms of why late-night eating is so destructive, because it goes far beyond just extra calories.
Okay, what else is going on?
It comes down to circadian biology. Every organ in your body has a biological clock, including your pancreas. As evening approaches and your brain begins secreting melatonin to prepare for sleep, Those melatonin receptors actually signal the pancreas to downregulate insulin production.
Wait, hold on. So the pancreas is literally going to sleep.
Essentially, yes, it is powering down for the night. So if you eat a heavy meal at 10 p.m., your body is profoundly ill-equipped to handle it. You just don't have enough insulin to clear the glucose.
Wow. So that sugar just stays elevated in your bloodstream for hours while you're sleeping.
Exactly. And that destroys your deep sleep architecture, it spikes your resting heart rate, and it completely dysregulates your appetite hormones for the entire next day.
This is such a paradigm shift. So many people out there think they're improving their health because they unlocked some mythical fasted state. But really, they just stopped forcing their sleeping pancreas to digest heavy meals at midnight.
That's precisely it. When you remove those late night calories, your blood sugar stabilizes, your sleep quality skyrockets, your inflammation drops, and suddenly you feel like a new person. It feels like magic, but it's really just aligning your eating with your circadian rhythm.
But when people first try to restrict their eating windows, the biggest hurdle is always hunger. When you're used to eating all day, hunger feels like a biological emergency. Like you're sitting at your desk at noon thinking, if I don't eat a sandwich right now, my brain is going to shut down.
Yeah, that is the huge psychological hurdle. We assume hunger is a fuel gauge, right? Telling us we are out of energy.
Right, exactly.
But hunger is actually driven by a hormone called ghrelin, and ghrelin is deeply misunderstood. It is an anticipatory hormone. It rises in response to your habitual meal times.
Oh, interesting. So it's basically an alarm clock, not a fuel gauge. Like if I eat lunch at noon every single day, my brain just conditions my stomach to release ghrelin at 11:30 a.m. to prepare for the incoming food.
That is precisely how it works. You feel absolutely starving at noon, not because your cells are starving, but simply because the bell rang. Your body is saying, hey, it's noon, we usually do the digestion thing right now. And the most empowering thing you can realize about fasting is that ghrelin does not rise infinitely. It comes in a wave. If you drink some water and just wait an hour, the wave passes, the ghrelin drops, and you feel completely normal again.
That really changes the relationship you have with your own stomach. But if we are fundamentally playing with hormones and biological rhythms, we have to look at what happens when people push these fasting windows to the extreme.
We definitely do.
Because stopping late night snacks is great, but what happens when people start restricting their food intake to a tiny, 2-hour window every day?
Well, that is where fasting culture has caused significant harm, particularly because it assumes a one-size-fits-all approach. And the demographic that gets hurt the most by aggressive fasting is women.
Really? Why is that?
The female endocrine system is exquisitely sensitive to signals of energy availability, much more so than the male system.
Okay, let's look at the mechanics of that. How does the female body actually sense that energy availability?
It happens in the brain. The female hypothalamus contains specific neurons called kisspeptin neurons. You can kind of think of them as the nutritional sensors that bridge your energy stores with your reproductive system.
Okay, kisspeptin neurons. Got it.
Yeah, and when a woman engages in aggressive fasting, especially combined with low calories, high stress, or intense workouts, those kisspeptin neurons detect the severe drop in available energy.
And the body interprets that drop as a famine.
Yes. And in a famine, reproducing is biologically dangerous. So the kisspeptin neurons stop signaling the hypothalamus, which effectively shuts down the pulse of reproductive hormones to conserve energy for basic survival.
So while some women might tolerate a standard fast, others who push it too far are literally sending their brains into a survival panic. And the fallout from that is severe, right? Like chronic fatigue, massive cortisol spikes, hair loss, thyroid downregulation, and even the total loss of their menstrual cycle.
It's devastating, which is why personalization is non-negotiable here. Current clinical evidence suggests that women in their reproductive years often do much, much better with gentler approaches, like a 12-hour overnight fast that simply aligns with circadian rhythms, without pushing the body into a perceived state of starvation.
So if aggressive fasting is dialing down female reproductive hormones to conserve energy, What else is the body sacrificing when it thinks it's starving? Doesn't it start breaking down muscle tissue for fuel?
Oh, absolutely. And that brings us to the biggest biological trap of extreme fasting. Muscle mass is your long term metabolic engine.
Right.
It is the primary sink where your body disposes of glucose. As we age, preserving muscle is highly correlated with longevity and disease prevention, and maintaining that muscle requires stimulating a process called muscle protein synthesis.
And you can't just stimulate that by eating one massive meal a day, right?
Yeah.
Because I see biohackers bragging about eating their entire day's worth of food in a single 1 hour sitting.
Yeah, and that's a huge mistake. Human biology has strict limits on digestion and absorption. Muscle protein synthesis is triggered by an amino acid called leucine. To maximize muscle building, you need a certain threshold of protein, usually around 30 to 40 grams per meal.
Okay.
But here is the catch. Once you hit that threshold and the muscle building process is turned on, any additional protein you eat in that same sitting does not build more muscle. The excess is simply oxidized for energy or excreted.
Oh, wow. So if you try to cram like 150 grams of protein into a single meal after a 20-hour fast, your body only uses a fraction of it to rebuild your muscles, and the rest is essentially wasted.
Exactly. Spreading your protein intake across 3 or 4 distinct meals throughout the day supports muscle maintenance infinitely better than cramming it into a tiny window.
That is so counter to what you see online.
I know. For older adults, athletes, or anyone trying to improve their body composition, hyper-restrictive fasting windows can literally destroy your strength and accelerate muscle loss.
This highlights just how dangerous viral trends can be. You watch a video of some 20-year-old guy getting shredded on a 20-hour fast, and you just assume it's exactly what you need. But biology is highly individual. So to be absolutely clear, who are the people who should bypass aggressive fasting completely?
Well, adolescents and teenagers, first and foremost. They are actively growing, their brains are developing, and their nutritional demands are incredibly high. Restricting their intake is biologically reckless.
Right. Makes sense. Who else?
Pregnant or breastfeeding individuals for obvious energy demand reasons. Anyone with a history of eating disorders because fasting protocols mimic and often trigger severe binge restrict cycles.
That's a huge one.
Yeah. And anyone with uncontrolled diabetes or who takes blood sugar lowering medications because fasting can cause profound life threatening hypoglycemia.
Context matters more than the trend. Always. Now, I want to pivot to the minutia. Because we've established that the long-term mechanics are what matter, yet people are deeply obsessed with the microscopic details. Let's look at the eternal internet debate. What actually breaks a fast?
Oh, this question. The answer entirely depends on what your specific goal for the fast is.
Okay, let's say the goal is just general metabolic health and giving the pancreas a break. What about black coffee?
Black coffee is fantastic. It contains virtually 0 calories, it won't spike your insulin, and the polyphenols in coffee actually stimulate certain cellular repair pathways.
Awesome. What if we add a tablespoon of heavy cream or butter, the whole bulletproof coffee trend?
Right, well, if your goal is deep cellular cleanup autophagy, then consuming pure fat will interrupt that process because your digestive machinery has to turn back on to process the lipids.
Makes sense.
However, pure fat does not spike insulin. So if your goal is just to keep your blood sugar stable and control your appetite until lunch, a little cream won't ruin your progress. It keeps you in a state of lipolysis or fat burning.
What about 0-calorie artificial sweeteners in a diet soda?
Now, this is fascinating biologically. It involves something called the cephalic phase insulin response. When you drink an artificial sweetener, your tongue tastes intense sweetness. It sends a signal to your brain which says, hey, sugar is coming. The brain then signals the pancreas to release a small amount of insulin in anticipation of those calories.
Wait, so even though there are 0 calories, your pancreas is still waking up and pumping out insulin just based on the taste?
In some people, yes.
Hmm.
And when the calories never actually arrive, that circulating insulin causes a slight drop in blood sugar, which actually triggers massive hunger and
Oh,
cravings.
wow.
Yeah. So while it technically has 0 calories, it can completely derail the behavioral benefits of the fast by making you ravenously hungry.
The nuance here is incredible. And honestly, looking at all this nuance, I have to point out the extreme irony of modern fasting culture. Like, we have somehow managed to take the oldest, most fundamental human behavior, which is simply not eating, and commercialized it into a billion-dollar industry.
It is the ultimate paradox. I mean,
Mhm.
we now have premium subscription fasting apps to tell us when to stop eating. We have specialized fasting electrolytes. We even have fasting snack bars, which is a literal oxymoron. We've basically taken the absence of food and turned it into a product.
We monetize
We
nothingness.
really did. And while an app can be a helpful tool for accountability, we have to be incredibly careful not to let commerce overcomplicate biology. You do not need a subscription to give your digestion a rest.
Exactly. So, synthesizing everything we've covered in this episode today, the evolutionary mismatch, the circadian rhythms of the pancreas, the kisspeptin neurons in women, and the limits of muscle protein synthesis, what is the most practical, evidence based approach for the listener right now?
The most scientifically sound approach is wonderfully boring. It is simply aligning your food intake with your circadian biology.
Just keeping it simple.
Yes, stop eating 2 to 3 hours before bed so your pancreas can power down and your melatonin can rise. Then allow for a natural 12 to 14 hour overnight fasting window. Sleep through most of it, wake up, drink some water, and when you do eat, prioritize high quality protein to protect your muscle mass.
It's not about punishment, it's about recovering better. If fasting makes your sleep decline, your anxiety spike, or your hair fall out, that is not a failure of your willpower. That is your biology giving you critical data that the protocol is just too stressful.
Right. Fasting is just a tool in the toolbox. When applied correctly, it can restore insulin sensitivity, eliminate late night junk food, and give you incredible mental clarity. When applied poorly, it strips away your muscle and dysregulates your hormones.
The real goal isn't to worship the act of restriction. It is to finally understand how your own machinery works. Which actually brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with today.
Let's hear it.
So, we've spent this entire episode unpacking the cellular mechanics of when to withhold food. But what if the ultimate biohack isn't about perfectly timing a 16-hour window on an app? What if the real hack is simply learning to decode the signals your body is sending you?
I love that.
Right. The next time that wave of hunger hits you at 3 p.m., take a breath and ask yourself, is my body actually asking for true cellular nourishment? Or is it just bored, stressed, or exhausted?
If you can honestly answer that question, you have truly mastered your metabolism.
We would love to hear from you on this. Leave a comment below with your own experience. Has fasting helped you repair your relationship with food, or has it hurt your hormones?
And if today's episode changed the way you understand your own biology, please share it with someone in your life who might need a more balanced, science based perspective on health.